The Volusia County Jane Doe, also known as the Ormond Beach Jane Doe, identified as Roberta Lynn Headley Weber, who was known by her friends as Bobby. This one begins in April of 1990 in the Daytona area of Florida on Ormond Beach in Volusia County. Usually I can tell who found the remains or at least a little bit of the story, but in this one, all I know is that they were found in a wooded area east of Clyde Morris Boulevard, which was about 1.5 miles or 2.5 kilometers north of Strickland Rage Road. This was on a path that leads from Morris Boulevard to Avenue D in the Daytona Pines Division. Her wrists had been bound with rope, and the only piece of clothing found was a nylon slip. They believe it was that slip that was used to strangle her. It was in fact still tied around her neck when she was found. There was unfortunately little to go on, and her first construction was done with clay. They don't even have the post-mortem interval listed. Because I know now how long she was missing, I would say she'd probably been there a year. They did know she had light brown hair tied into 2 pigtails with red bands. It was likely she'd given birth to 1 or more children and had what was described as extensive, unusual dental work. They'd hoped this odd dental work would help match her up, but it wasn't much to go on and it didn't happen. They did get a few tips on the case, but none really panned out, and a digital rendering was done in 2015, but this again didn't lead to her name. All that's left, of course, is DNA. They first submitted to NamUs, it didn't work, and then they decided to go the genetic genealogy route through Othram Labs. This would lead to a woman in Missouri who would say she hadn't seen her sister Roberta since 1989. This was 1 year before our Jane Doe was found. She would say she believed her sister was either deceased or living in California, but that she hadn't heard from her. Sadly, this also led to 3 children who hadn't seen their mother since 1989. It would take 1 year from start to finish for the DNA to pan out, finally discovering 32-year-old Bobby Headley Weber. 3 kids now know their mother didn't run off and live her life without them somewhere else. It just seems like a huge slight on top of everything else that's been done. The family suffers, she suffers, and the family believes she walked away, which is common and understandable. What little else I do know is that Bobby got married in 1979 and she divorced in 1989, the year she went missing, which is possibly suspicious as far as the ex goes. Bobby Weber went unidentified for 33 years. Had she lived the life she deserved, the life her family deserved, she would be 65 years old today. Sonoma County John Doe, identified as Joshua Daniel Fritz. In December 2014, there were scattered remains found near a creek in Sonoma County, California. This was just off Chenate Road, which is west of Terra Linda Drive in Santa Rosa. Because they only found partial remains, there was little that could even be told. DNA testing confirmed that they belonged to a male, but a match wasn't made through CODIS. More of his remains were found near this location in April of 2021. This would eventually lead to the pursuit of DNA suitable for genetic genealogy. In 2023, the California Department of Justice, in collaboration with Sonoma County Sheriff, they would submit to Othram Labs in hopes a more advanced DNA could be found. They also took the opportunity to match the 2 groups of remains with each other, confirming they belonged to one person. This would eventually lead to the name of Joshua Daniel Fritz. He was born on December 30th, 1985. He was actually from the same town where he was found, Santa Rosa, California. His remains were discovered just days before he would have turned 29. However, by that point, he had been missing for 3 years. This would mean he was likely around 26 when his life was taken. Joshua was officially reported missing in May of 2019 and entered into the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System at the time. The circumstances that surround Joshua's death are really mysterious. They do know that he was a victim of a physical assault that led to him losing his life. So they need someone with information on this case to come forward to the Sonoma County Sheriff's Office. Joshua Daniel Fritz was missing for 12 years and an unidentified John Doe for 9. Had he lived, he would be 38 years old today. The Kingman John Doe identified as Sherman George. On January 22, 1996, 2 men were out walking their dogs near Kingman, Arizona. They were wandering around looking for rocks, and it was here that they made the discovery of a shallow grave, which was next to a large rock formation underneath a juniper tree. This grave was located near a gravel pit about half a mile off Stockton Road near milepost 8. The University of Arizona's Department of Anthropology would examine the remains that were discovered, and they would determine he was a black male around 5'10" to 6'1", or 178 to 185 centimeters. They believed him likely between 30 and 40, and the COD was a wound to his head. In February of 2023, they would reopen the case to advance DNA testing in hopes of using genetic genealogy. And this went a little faster than a lot of the cases, and they were able to make an announcement after only 7 months. Thanks to the Special Investigation Unit of Maricopa County, which teamed up with Othram Labs, we know now that the man found nearly 3 decades ago is Sherman George. Sherman grew up in Los Angeles, California. The Army veteran eventually became estranged from his family, and they hadn't seen him since 1994, which was 2 years before he was found. So because of the personal relationships that were going on, they didn't have any idea he was actually missing, so he wasn't reported missing. They believed he had just gone his own way. There's no postmortem interval, so I'm not sure if he passed away right after his family saw him or if it had been longer. It does sound like it wasn't unusual for him not to contact his family. The police were able to find out that Sherman had been in the Mojave Desert with some of his former Army buddies. They had been in the Mojave Desert both in California and across the state line in Arizona. I suspect the police know who was with Sherman at the time, but they haven't released any names or persons of interest. If anyone has any information at all, please call the number on your screen. His age at the time that I recorded this wasn't given, but it appears he was in his 30s or 40s when he was found. I do know that Sherman George was stationed at Fort Bragg in North Carolina, which is now Fort Liberty. He was found 318 miles or 511 kilometers from home. Sherman George was an unidentified John Doe for 27 years. Huge thanks for watching all the way to the end, and a big thanks to all of you who consistently like and comment on the videos. Whether you leave a full comment or an emoji, it makes a huge difference. The whole dance with YouTube is hard sometimes. I gain only about 350 subs a month. So if you consistently watch my videos, maybe take a moment to subscribe. It's a huge push toward the videos being suggested to new people. The next goal is 20,000. Thanks everyone for watching. Take care of yourselves and each other.